I've always done everything for my daughter, Emily. She's my only child, and I've poured my heart and soul into supporting her. When she got engaged to Ethan, I was thrilled. The wedding was a big deal for me. Not just because she's my little girl, but because I wanted to give her the wedding of her dreams. So, when she started planning, I didn't hesitate. I cashed in my savings, took out loans, and pulled every string I could. I booked the venue, the caterers, the photographers, everything she wanted, I made happen. The thought of seeing her walk down the aisle, glowing in her dress, made all the sacrifices worth it. But then, 2 weeks before the wedding, everything changed. Emily called me one night, her voice strained, as if she had been crying. She said she didn't want me at the wedding. I was stunned. I thought it was some kind of misunderstanding, but she was serious. She and Ethan are going through some tension, and it would be better if I just didn't come, she said. I couldn't believe it. After everything I had done for her, everything I had sacrificed, she was telling me I couldn't even be there for one of the most important moments of her life. At first, I tried to reason with her. I told her I understood if there were issues with Ethan, but that I was her father. This was my moment too. But Emily, with the coldest tone I've ever heard, insisted that it was for the best. She said I'd cause more drama if I showed up. It felt like a punch to the gut. I've always been a good father. I've always been there for her. And now she was pushing me out as if I was nothing. After the phone call, the next few days were a blur. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face, but it wasn't her face of a loving daughter anymore. It was cold, distant, like a stranger. I kept wondering, where did I go wrong? How did this happen? I thought back to all the sacrifices I had made. All those late nights at work, the times I'd skipped out on my own friends' events just so I could be at her dance recitals. I remembered every little thing I'd done to make sure Emily had everything she needed. I poured everything I had into her. I didn't want her to struggle like I did growing up, so I worked harder, earned more, put aside my own dreams to make sure hers came true. But now, she was rejecting me. And not just that, she was shutting me out of her life entirely. How could a daughter who once called me her hero now tell me I wasn't welcome at her wedding? I wanted to reach out to her again. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe if I talked to her calmly, we could work things out. But then I thought about it. Emily was a grown woman. She had made her decision. And the truth was, I was angry. I was furious that after all I had done for her, she was pushing me aside for someone who barely knew her. That's when I decided to take a step back and do what I had never done before. I focused on myself. I stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped trying to make things better. If she didn't want me at her wedding, then fine. But I was done being the one who always made the effort. The days turned into weeks, and still, no word from Emily. I spent the time working through my emotions. I tried to convince myself it was her choice, that maybe this was just a phase, that maybe the wedding stress was clouding her judgment. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about the wedding. She had made a choice, and it was clear now that I was no longer a part of her life. But then came an unexpected message. It was a text from Ethan, her fiancé. I didn't expect this. I had never spoken to him much, but I knew he was the reason behind this mess. I opened the message cautiously, my heart racing. Hey, I know this situation isn't great, but I wanted to reach out and try to understand where you're coming from. I know Emily's been pushing you away, but I don't think this is what she really wants. Can we talk? For a moment, I was stunned. Ethan wanted to talk? This was the guy who had been the cause of all the tension between me and Emily. This was the guy who had convinced her to exclude me from her wedding. And now he wanted to talk. I almost didn't reply. Why should I? I had already been made the villain in this whole situation. So why would I want to open up to him? But I was curious. I wanted to understand why Emily was so adamant about excluding me from her big day. What had he said to her to make her turn on me like this? So I agreed to meet him. When Ethan and I met, it was awkward at first. He was polite, but there was a coldness in the air, something unspoken between us. He started by apologizing for the tension, but it wasn't a sincere apology. It felt rehearsed, as if he was trying to fix something, but didn't really know how. "I know Emily hasn't handled this the best way," Ethan said, sitting across from me at the coffee shop, his hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee. "But it's not all on her. I've seen you two clash a lot in the past. You're a bit controlling, don't you think?" I blinked in surprise. "Controlling?" I repeated, trying to understand what he was saying. "I did everything for her. Everything. I worked hard, made sure she had the best education, the best opportunities. I gave up my own dreams just to see her succeed." Ethan's face tightened. "Yeah, I know. But that's the thing. You've done so much for her. It's almost like you expect something in return. You've been treating her like she owes you, and it's put a strain on her relationship with you." I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to argue, to tell him how wrong he was, but there was something in his tone that made me stop. He wasn't just attacking me. He was trying to explain something I didn't want to hear. "Emily's independent now," Ethan continued. "She's her own person, and she doesn't need to feel guilty for setting boundaries. I think you're having a hard time letting go." I wanted to snap back, tell him how absurd that was, but I couldn't. Deep down, I knew he was right. I had always been there for Emily, always been the one she could rely on. But now she was an adult, and it was clear that she wanted to make her own decisions, even if that meant leaving me behind. The conversation didn't go as planned. I had hoped Ethan would apologize for his part in all of this, but instead, I found myself questioning everything. Was I really controlling? Had I been too overbearing? I had always thought I was doing the right thing by protecting her, by making sure she had everything she needed. But maybe I had crossed a line. In the end, we parted ways without resolving anything. But I walked away from that conversation with a different perspective. Ethan's words stayed with me long after we said goodbye. As the days dragged on, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of control. I had spent weeks thinking about what to do, whether I should apologize, whether I should try to make things right with Emily. But the truth was, I couldn't. I had tried. I had done everything for her, but she had rejected me. She had pushed me away for someone else, for a man who didn't even understand the sacrifices I had made for her. And now, she didn't even want me at her wedding. I couldn't keep pretending like nothing had happened. The pain of losing her was unbearable, but the frustration I felt was worse. I had been betrayed, not just by her, but by the man who was supposed to be her partner. That's when I made the decision. I was going to cancel everything. Every vendor, every booking, every plan that I had paid for. I was going to take it all back and leave them scrambling to put together something at the last minute. I reached out to the venue, the photographer, the caterers. I told them to cancel everything. I wasn't going to let Emily have the wedding she thought she was entitled to. I wasn't going to let her walk away from me without feeling the consequences. The fallout came quickly. Emily called, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. She accused me of ruining everything, of destroying her dream wedding. But what hurt more than her anger was the coldness in her tone. She didn't even try to understand why I had done it. And when she said those words, "I don't want you at the wedding, Dad. I don't want you in my life," I realized that the daughter I had raised was gone. She wasn't coming back. I had lost her, forever. As the days passed, the weight of my actions began to settle in. I had done what I thought was right, but the consequences were more than I could bear. I couldn't take back what I had done, and I wasn't sure I even wanted to. But in the end, I realized that sometimes the hardest thing to do is let go. I had sacrificed everything for Emily, and she had chosen to leave me behind. And as much as it hurt, I had to accept that. I wasn't the villain in this story. I was just a father who tried to give his daughter everything, only to realize that sometimes love isn't enough.